Hello, this is Sarah Ray, editor of Smart Cities World. Welcome to today's webinar, and thank you for staying on the line with us. Today's webinar is with Paradox Engineering and AEM, and we're going to discuss blockchain and its potential to boost smart city cybersecurity and help cities generate new revenue while tackling challenges. Today's session is being recorded, so after the webinar finishes, we'll be sending out an email with a link so that you can watch it again whenever it's convenient for you. We're going to have a short presentation to begin with, and then a short discussion panel today. And we welcome your questions, so please send them in via the chat box on the control panel. So on to today's speakers. I'm joined by Gianni Monetti, the CEO of Paradox Engineering, and Paolo Rossi, who's the director of AEM, a Swiss utility company. Welcome both. Gianni is going to set the scene for us and make the case for how blockchain can boost cybersecurity and support data monetization. And Paolo will share how AEM is putting some of the principles Gianni has discussed into practice in a specific project. Okay, so let's get started with the presentations. I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas around blockchain, Gianni.
Thank you, Sarah, for the kind introduction, and good morning, good afternoon, to everyone joining this webinar. And Sarah, are you passing me the control, please?
Yes, you should have the control now. If you just click on the slide, you should be able to move them. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so you can see the faces of the two people that are going to speak today. So, and easy to understand, I'm the one on the left and Paolo is the other one. So, blockchain for smart cities, cybersecurity, and data monetization. We heard quite a lot about blockchain in these times, and I would like first to start, with a quick introduction, and not from the technical point of view, what blockchain is, with the intent of debunking the concept of blockchain. So let's first start about the basic principles. It's a matter of trust. So no need to say that in any personal and business relationship we need to exchange information to generate and take actions. So this is the way why we communicate, and we could try to communicate effectively. And actually, ideally we tend to act under the trust of the information we have received, and we tend to support the quality and the information we send in order to generate action. And trust is about relationship we build between various entities, or we can delegate trust to intermediate bodies on which both parties or all the parties engaged into the process of exchanging information to generate action, trust. So this is intermediation. So this is the basic principle of a trusted relationship, and how communication expressed in terms of exchanging information to generate action is. Now, let's go trust into a digitalized world. So digitalization is all about electronic exchange of information. So we see the link to the previous description. It's information, digital information. And today we have the internet as we have known since almost, I would say, 35, 40 years. And the internet is all about transferring information for whatever reason, for command, control, generating action, operating remote devices, or communicating with the other part. If you notice, one good point of observation is that transferring information over the internet is all about duplicating the information. To exemplify, if I have a PowerPoint presentation such as the one we are presenting, I have it on my laptop, I take it, I create an email, I attach it to the email, and I send it to you or to another person. In this moment, we have two chunks of information, one that resides where it is supposed to be created on my laptop, and the other resides in the inbox of the recipient. And from that point, okay, these two chunks of information, okay, may take different path. They may be different, okay, and we are to the point, okay, which is the original one, which is the trustable one. If you go to the top of the slide, blockchain does not transfer information, okay, transfer the ownership of information. So, how to say, in the example of the transfer by email of the presentation, I'm not transferring anymore a copy of the file. I'm transferring fingerprint of that file to you, okay, and through that fingerprint you can access, okay, the original copy, which exists only in one unit, in one place, in one version, okay. So to summarize so far, okay, internet is about transferring information by duplication. Blockchain is about transferring the ownership of the information, and without going through intermediation. Of course, intermediation exists today into the internet to transfer information with the intermediary trust. Okay, we all have seen, okay, services for web services for signing documents, web services for sharing documentation, web services for creating data room, or notary services. All these services, they have an intermediate entity that both parties have to trust. In the blockchain, there is no intermediation. Okay? It's either one or the other, and I transfer the right I want to the other party, and the other party get the rights I transfer to them, to my ownership of that. So now, if we translate this, okay, duplication versus ownership, and what makes something valuable? It's not because I can have an entity, okay, and then I can copy as many entity as I want, that this entity is having a value. So if thinking about a painting of famous artists, okay, they are valuable because they only exist in one copy, okay, and this makes that painting an asset. Okay? So if I would be so talented, okay, to create a PowerPoint slides, okay, that would have any value, then that value, okay, makes sense, okay, if I can transform that piece of information into an asset. Okay? So to summarize, duplication of asset is not desirable. Okay? What transform an entity into asset is the ownership and the right to who owns, okay, that specific asset. And this is all about blockchain. Okay, blockchain is a combination of technology with the ability to attribute rights and ownership to a piece of digital information, and transfers the right of this piece of information, digital information, between other parties without intermediation, that are telling us, okay, yes, okay, I certify that you have the right on this piece of information, yes, and I certify that these rights are transferred to the other entity, okay, for that time or that amount of money, and so on and so forth. This is all about blockchain, okay. I thought it was important for us, okay, first to debunk, okay, this basic principle that differentiate the internet and the blockchain. Now, okay, what about blockchain? Okay, in terms of technology, it's not a new technology that comes out from the blue sky. It's a combination of concepts that exist into the financial industry and the computer science industry. It is a smart combination of them. So it's a distributed database, it's consensus processes between peers to create a consensus about transaction. It's the concept of ledger, very well known into accounting. It's the concept of cryptography, which exists since I would say, the human being started to exchange information. And in the late, okay, it exists in digital cryptography since the 50, I would say, since the, no, yeah, since the 50, okay. And all this combination of this technology, okay, they provide and assure integrity, validity, and immutability of the data we transfer. So I'm not bothering, okay, the audience here about names, okay, you have heard about a lot of things, okay, Bitcoin, so on and so forth, okay, we're not talking about cryptocurrency here, but Bitcoin, okay, is a concept which relies on blockchain technology, and so on. All Ethereum is the same. So it's are different application of blockchain technology. No, why blockchain matters for cities that are turned to smart digitalization? Okay, cities, okay, to be turned into smart, which means, okay, transforming services existing, okay, into something that you can monitor and control, need open and interoperable digital infrastructures, okay, digital network. Okay? And by open and interoperable, we can assure that the investment that a city does today can be capitalized in the future for future application. The model is pretty much the same we have seen in the internet. Okay? We've seen so many applications popping up in the internet from the web service and so on and so forth, just because the internet was open and interoperable, and everyone with some willingness to do it, some basic knowledge, okay, could access the specification of the internet and building services on top of it. And suddenly, okay, and magically, between brackets, between comma, okay, find, okay, the new software, okay, being interoperable with the other software, and finding people exchanging information at two corners of the world, okay, by the magic of openness and interoperability. And openness and interoperability in terms of infrastructure for city is what really enabled participation and innovation. Another interesting example about openness and interoperability is the model of the app that we have seen blowing into the mobile industry in the past couple of decades, okay, 15 years, okay. Being able, okay, to develop your own application, let's say, being able to transform your innovative idea into application, putting in a store, and everyone, okay, being able to download and use that application, okay. So the same, a digital infrastructure for a smart city should enable. So we install an infrastructure into a city for whatever is the first and most in-demand application, lighting, parking, waste, so on and so forth, metering. We assure that that infrastructure serves the purpose of the first demanding application, but more than that, we assure that the infrastructure, okay, is open and interoperable, and I can add further services down the line. And among these additional services are those that I know today, but even more important are those that I don't know today. No one back in the mid of the 80s could conceive a world with mobile application. No one back in the mid of the 80s, when the advent of the internet could conceive, okay, video conference over Skype. Okay, it was just creativity, openness, interoperability, and almost inexistent or totally inexistent dependency from single vendor enable all that. Okay, in the same way, cities should think. Okay, we do an investment today, we do an investment to serve what we need, but okay, we assure, okay, that the future can be supported by this investment. So there are some objection about openness. Okay, openness okay, more secure than closed system? We believe yes. Openness is more secure than closed system, because I think that an uncountable number of pairs of eyes that look at the same technology for different purposes, okay, for the purpose of scientific understanding, for the purpose of building something, for the genuine purpose of contributing, or for the malicious purpose of breaking down, okay, is much more than what a limited team of people can do on a closed technology. Okay. And yes, there is a risk and there is a reward, and open infrastructure is much more rewarding than the risk of having an open infrastructure. Given that open infrastructure does not mean necessarily unsecure infrastructure, okay? And but however, cybercrime is a risk today, and that no city can overlook any longer, because we are not talking about several dozen of computer or several hundreds of computer and several dozen of servers. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of devices that get connected into an open and interoperable network, although if protected, okay, with all the technologies for protecting and securing the system that we know today. Okay, and here is exactly the point. Okay, the technology and the paradigm that we know today to protect this digital technology are those that we have been developing over the past decade. So it's a perimeter of defense, is encryption, and is a strong password policy. And there is plenty of security concept, okay, security paradigm, security technology. Okay? But there is one point, okay, the more security you put in a device, the more you try to take this security concept from the defense environment, aerospace environments, medical environments, the higher is the cost of the device you have. And cost versus, okay, hundreds of thousands of devices into a city is kind of a conflicting concept, okay, because it's, let's make an example of smart lighting, okay. When we talk about mid-sized city, 50,000 people, easily talk about probably 10 to 50 to 20,000 luminaires, and you cannot have a device that has a cost of $1,000 because it's highly secure and defense grade on every street light. Okay, you need to have a reasonable price with a very reasonable security on that device, which minimize the risk of someone, okay, with malicious intention using that infrastructure of these 50,000 devices connecting in a wireless network, okay, and exploiting one or few of those devices and using those devices to create a distributed denial of service or to disrupting the service themselves. So how we reconcile the effect of the growing demand on security for IoT devices, okay, with the need, okay, of not blowing the cost of these things. We had an answer in Paradox Engineering, okay, which was basically using blockchain for that. So we implemented blockchain technology with a concept in mind, so to provide intrinsic defense of the data. Okay. Intrinsic defense of the data means that any information that goes into a device or that comes from a device, and when we say information, could be monitor information, consumption, parking availability, level of waste in a bin, or instructions, okay, to turn that device on, okay, to open, close, okay, and are only accepted if they are validated by the blockchain. So there cannot be duplication of comments or information that comes outside the blockchain, which brings all the nice principle that I discussed a few minutes ago about the consensus, the trust, and disintermediation. And this intermediation is also important because it doesn't provide a single point of attack, okay? Because any device is part of the blockchain, and if one device is attacked, okay, that device can change its behavior only, okay, if the whole blockchain is attacked. Okay? And this is all because of the characteristic of chain of cryptographic information, okay, and the history of the chain and the immutability of the chain of the cryptographic linked information is almost impossible. I would say it's impossible to be done. Okay, or since in the digital world everything can be built, okay, and can be dismantled, I would say not impossible, but the cost of doing that, okay, overcome, okay, by several order of magnitude, okay, the reward of doing that. Okay. This is why we adopted blockchain for hardening the cybersecurity of our IoT solution. So we're not abandoning the conventional technologies, encryption, okay, certificates, strong password policies, so on and so forth, and good rules, okay, for designing good code and minimizing, okay, the flow in the code, okay, which are the major source of weaknesses in the digital. But we are also adding a layer of intrinsic defense of the data that goes in and out from a device. Okay, and this is what we believe it's the innovation in cybersecurity. And by doing that, we are catching two birds with a stone. Okay, the first bird, and I apologize for the brutality of my history, but it's American. The first bird, the cybersecurity. Okay, and the second one is that we have blockchain infrastructure in place. Okay, and what can we do with this blockchain infrastructure in place? Well, since it's in place, okay, for the cybersecurity, okay, so you see here at the bottom, okay, every device has a hardware security module that establishes trusted relationship with intermediators, okay, and all these devices, they participate into the blockchain, okay, and building the consensus. And here you see the central software for management, which is not a single point of weaknesses, because if you remove this, okay, the blockchain is basically supported, okay, by all the devices that participated to the network. Okay? But by, I think we have another slide, okay. This is the blockchain, but I was saying that by the second bird that we catch, the second is that we have a blockchain infrastructure in place that assures cybersecurity, but because of the uniqueness of the information, which is not more transferred, but is the right of information that is transferred. And so the data itself, the information becomes an asset. We have a nice platform to offer to the customer to monetize the data. So monetize data, what does mean? Okay, I always like to ask the question: how much is worth an information that a parking lot is free or occupied? Okay, the answer, okay, is that it's worth how much. It's worth what you are willing to pay, and what you're willing to pay, okay, is the foundation of a market. Okay, it's I buy it, I resell it, and then I sell it. Okay. And the blockchain assure that if I buy that information it belongs only to me. Okay, and this is what, okay, the blockchain infrastructure that we implemented in our smart urban network solution for a smart city allows. Okay, so the creation of a marketplace where the customer, so like an example, a utility or a city, can create their own marketplace using, okay, from the shelf component that we offer, and then they can create their own local economy. Okay, so again, okay, there is a second advantage of using blockchain. One advantage, okay, was using open and interoperable technology for smart city infrastructures. Okay, and we discussed before which are the advantages of doing that with open and interoperable technology. The second one, okay, is the ability, okay, to monetize the data that are generated, okay, by all the devices belonging, okay, to the smart city infrastructures, okay, and also adding additional, okay, source of data into the marketplace. And the smart guy of tomorrow, but I believe, okay, the smart guys, okay, of today can say, well, you know, I see a value of mashing up this information from this device, from this information from that source of data on the internet, okay, and creating an added value marketplace and creating an app and monetizing the data. Okay, and this is what we had in mind when implementing this. Yep.
Thank you very much, Gianni. Some really interesting ideas there. So just to remind the audience, if you have questions, please send them in via your control panel. Gianni will be happy to answer them at the end after the next short panel discussion that we're going to have. So Paolo, welcome.
Hello.
So
good afternoon to everybody.
Good afternoon. At AEM, you're putting some of the principles Gianni's outlined into practice. So I just wondered if you could briefly outline a little bit about AEM and the work that you're doing. And Gianni, if you have any input throughout the discussion, please do share.
Okay, AEM is a small Swiss utility, but we are fully involved in the European market. What's going on in the European market, but it's a move which affects all over the world. That means that we have a substitution of all the power plants, centralized big unities with a lot of distributed energy sources. Mostly of them are renewable based on photovoltaics or wind. This is not just a technical move, changing one source with another one, done in a different way, but it's a change of paradigm, which have a big impact on the way utilities are moving and their relationship with the customers. Basically, those sources are less programmable, have a strong seasonal footprint, and they are connected to the grid through the low voltage grid. Instead, the big centralized unit went to the high voltage grid, which is creating some problems of imbalances, security of the supply, determination of the load profile within the next 24, 48 hours. And how to tackle those problems probably is not just a technical issue, but we need some intelligence to be injected into the system. And this is the real change of paradigm. Either on the way we are collecting data, because we need data for allowing us to manage the system in an intelligent way, in a smart way. And we need also intelligence in sense of an algorithm for managing the grid and keeping it balanced. And that's what we did. In fact, we did a rollout of the meters, introducing smart meters, so that we have the ability to collect a wide range of data, which will be, let's say, transferred to a central unit through a broadband, because we need those data with a high frequency, every minute roughly. And then this data will be processed by an algorithm based on artificial intelligence, which is able to first give us a forecast of the consumes. That means a load profile, in fact, technical state, the forecast on the consumption for the next 24 hours, the ability to keep the forecast in the reality, acting on the demand offer side, and to keep, let's say, the tension in a valid range in order to secure the supply. Obviously, what have all this procedure to do with what Gianni said before? It means we have a data transfer, we have data valorization. And that means that there are, let's say, a relationship between the customers on one end, which are producing those data, and the utility on the other end, which is processing this data in order to keep the security of the supply. So the reward is more on the security and the reliability of the supply than on monetary terms in the short time. But that means that you have to build up a trust that you have not to misuse the data that you are getting, that you are rewarding then probably through the tariff, but in any event rewarding then to the owner or an end, and to probably use it also for other purposes, but always with the knowledge of the owners. And that is based basically on what Jenny said before on blockchain. We are not an extended yet transfer of data based on blockchain, but we did a pilot project in a small district where this is already implemented. And I saw, speaking with the prosumers and the user, the end user, that the trust is growing. Obviously, through the broadband that we have set in place, we have also the possibility to control or to introduce other kind of services, which may be basically, because we are a utility, a public one, like control the parking, control waste management, and so on. But it could be also for private purposes, but based on a trustful system.
Okay. So you mentioned some of the new opportunities as well for your business. I wonder if you might expand on some of the examples and how you're identifying them and the value and that sort of thing.
Yeah, basically what we are doing now is just to keep data which are related to the consumption and to try to cover, let's say, the demand by a reliable offer. But because the offer is based on dispersed resources which are not reliable in terms of programmability, we need now to find a way in order to cover this. And the fact that we have this data allowed us to have an energy purchase, which is the most reliable one, and let's say the most cheap also, or the cheapest in some ways, in order to meet the customer's requirement. That's the value that we are giving now to them, and the reward that the customer have in having, let's say, first of all, a transparent bill. We can clearly give all the value, the added value chain, how the power they are getting has been supplied on one end. On the other end, they make, let's say, deal, or they may count on a medium-term reliability in terms of supply, and that's I think in an energy world in transition is the most important thing that we can do in order to create a trustful system.
Okay. Gianni, just on that point then, do you have anything to add on identifying this new value that can be unlocked for cities or utilities?
I fully share what Paolo said, and for us, openness and interoperability, and with layered with blockchain is again is a tool set that you can give back the power, the potential of exploiting the value of the data to those that ultimately generate the data, which are the citizens.
Okay. So Paolo, from the work that you have done so far, what are the main things that you would say you have learned, perhaps things that other people could learn from, so to not have to go over it themselves, or perhaps any challenges that you've overcome or that you still face?
Okay, we are still in a phase of testing, and it's amazing because on one end, you have all the problem arising from the real world. That means if you see some picture about smart cities like the one before Gianni was showing on the screen, you see all these modern cities with all the devices set in place, the interoperability, which is working properly. But we are moving in a different environment. That means that we are moving on the countryside, where you have a lot of differences among the buildings, among, let's say, the the channel. We don't have, for example, optic fibers in order to transfer in a reliable way data. So that we have to create something which is creative, and what we did together with Paradox Engineering, that means to create an hybrid system based on PLC on one end, the radio frequencies on the other end, and the other end of obviously optic fibers. So and when you enter the home and you start collecting data, what it means, there is enough space, there is a connection, and so on. So the real world is quite different overall on the countryside than modern and technological cities, but we have to deal with if we want really to achieve the goal to have this technology spread off on all over the world. That's the first point that I would like to outline. And the second one is the ability that you have to do a cultural change, because now we have a lot of devices. We are connected all the time. We are interoperable, but I don't know if real people is able to use on a long term. I mean, all these opportunities that we have. Maybe it's fashionable to have some apps on the portable, and then you use it, you show to the friends. But in the end of the day, using it for doing business or for improving your lifestyle is something different. And let's say it's a long run to be achieved. Probably it's need a generation in order to understand really what's going on. The fact that we are talking a lot with our prosumers means that they understood more about what is going on. They achieve knowledge, some knowledge degree that probably other people doesn't have, but it's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I would add that, Johnny here, I would add, Sarah, that this is, I would say, the essence of innovation. Okay, the few that tried, okay, and some failed, some succeeded, okay, but for sure, okay, are those that follow, okay, that took the advantage of innovation, not that those that created, okay. So it's and this is the nature of our companies, okay, and this is why, okay, we are promoting open interoperability, but promoting, okay, blockchain for smart city for cybersecurity. So it's someone has to do.
Yes, the first step is always the most important. If you ask me if I did a proper and exact business plan when we started this adventure, I may tell you openly no. But at a certain point of time, we had the feeling that we had to do it in order to anticipate a little bit the market. And this was our great advantage. So what we are, a small utility like ours, the dispersed small valley of Switzerland will never be part of such a panel if we wouldn't have done these steps.
I believe that the last 5-year business plan I've seen were those of the Soviet Union, okay, but they didn't really work out well. Okay.
No, absolutely no.
So Gianni, do you think, could you share from your observations of this project and other areas that you've worked in of what fundamentals do need to be in place to realize the vision that you've outlined? I mean, can anybody do it, or there are certain things that need to happen first, technically, culturally, otherwise?
Well, we understand that if we consider smart city, okay, and smart city is city, okay, it's a conventional, I would say, conservative way of doing business for utility, okay, not power here for sure. And so we cash in with energy, we cash in with services, okay, and already digitalization, it's already a big step, okay. But we are seeing the move, okay, because digitalization today is needed because you cannot add as much services as you need given the growth of urbanization. And so if you cannot add linearly services, lighting services, water, parking, okay, there is a second thing that you can do, okay, is making a good use of the services that you already have, okay. And making a good use of the service you already have is all about monitoring and controlling, okay? And this is the first argument, okay, for opening the discussion, okay, with this conservative environment. Then blockchain on top of that, okay, I agree with you, Sarah, it had an additional layer of complexity to understand. But again, there is no need to understand, okay, how the mechanics, okay, works behind blockchain. There is a need of demystifying blockchain and the public blockchain for cryptocurrency. These are two different things. Although I believe, okay, that we all became aware of the word blockchain because of cryptocurrency. So we have to give the merit to that, and not basically, let's say, throwing down the trash, okay, the cryptocurrency, because this is why we became aware. But it has to be explained in terms of the advantages and the benefits. Okay, it doesn't really have um, a layer of complexity. It doesn't really have a layer of computational need. It only adds a layer of, let's say, application that allows you, okay, to make additional exploitation of the data that are generated by the digitalization of cities.
Mm-hmm. So, Paolo, to put that to you then, how did you feel about the blockchain aspect? Was it something that was important to you? Did you feel a need to understand it more technically, or are you more interested in the benefits? I'm just wondering from your perspective.
From my perspective is that this is, like Gianni said before, an instrument for creating trust, and because in the end of the day, any service, any data is based, any data exchange is based on trust. Probably we don't have it clear up to now how much we can use it and how far we can go with this new technology. We are just doing the first step, and it's just like a data validation. But as we told before, it's just a first step into an unknown path that we have to follow. I'm old enough for remembering when the mobile phone were introduced into the market. They were just devices like the old phone, but just mobile. Nobody could have in mind at this time 30 years ago that it could be a device like a tablet, that it could be used for the app, that we would have WhatsApp and so on. So that this is something which has been created from scratch using technology, and that will be the same. So that the means don't ask me how to do. We use it for validating data now, which is like a trivial and a basic option. Quite important, nevertheless, but a basic option. But for the future uses, I think that we need a generation, the new generation, grow up now with all these smart devices that may create an added value on that. We just create the infrastructure. We did the first step in introducing it, and then now the creativity of the people have to work with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, brilliant. So, Gianni, this is a question for you, which has come in from the audience. Obviously, as we're always discussing, there's so many challenges that need to be addressed in cities. How do we identify the applications which are best served by blockchain technology?
Can you please repeat the question, Sarah? How we do identify?
How do we identify the challenges in cities which are best addressed by blockchain technology, or the applications for it?
Well, first of all, okay, there is one which is transversal, okay, which is an improved cybersecurity layer, okay, and this is one. Number two is, you know, we are kind of agnostic, okay, to what you can do out of the data that are managed by the blockchain. So our goal is to making the data available, but I'm pretty sure, okay, that someone finding a correlation between waste and transportation and lighting and pollution and weather information, okay, can create something smart and useful for the community. And so the goal here is not that Paradox Engineering comes up with a list of applications, okay, probably what we're going to do is a few of them just as an example, but the goal is not that we are coming up with the application that can be built on top of the blockchain, rather than coming up with a toolbox, okay, where smart minds can develop, okay, application on top of the blockchain using the data that are being assetized by the blockchain. So it's really an enable. Then how you start this, you can run hackathons, you can run competition, you can bring in university students, okay, you can have startups, okay, doing things. You can listen, okay, to which are the pain and gain point of a utility and city, okay, and sit with them and see what could be addressed with blockchain, okay. And I believe that, for one example, and Paolo is very knowledgeable in this, being able of trading electrical consumption data, okay, and exchanging those data because they are certified, okay, and exchanging those data through blockchain means what I said before, is transferring the ownership of those data, not duplicating those data may have a value itself, okay? And just came in my mind now. Paolo, can you comment?
No, it's fully complying with the new law. For example, in Switzerland, as a distribution system operator, we can use the data we are collecting from the end users just for commercial purposes. But what we can do is just to sell this data to a third party through a blockchain application, so that also the real owner, that means the users of this data, can be rewarded on that. That's quite important because it's complying with the new rule. You can avoid to have a misuse of data which own to the customers and not to you.
Yeah.
Are we answering the question? I hope.
Yeah. So what about areas then? You've mentioned new revenues and things. Do you have any view then, Gianni, on which areas might be good to tackle first? You know, regardless perhaps of the blockchain, just because they're good places that could generate new revenue.
Yes, parking. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
for example, waste. Okay, you can have a model. Okay, you pay for what you contribute. You don't pay on. You don't pay. Okay, today you pay per the square meters you occupy, or you pay per the number of people in the family. Tomorrow you may pay waste for what you use per use. Okay, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or I told the application you can have with electrical vehicles, for example, terms of the exchange power for being supplied or for supplying the grid. That's also something which is quite important in the future world, when electrical vehicle will become the majority of the vehicle in circulation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One other example, okay, maybe a bit fancy, okay, is that when you have a blockchain in place, a city has a blockchain in place, and they may also think to create their own asset, their own tokens, okay, their own cryptocurrency, seed to cryptocurrency, and out of that they can create their own incentivization model. Okay, think about reward programs of the miles, okay, we have in the airlines, okay, rather, okay, in the various grocery shop we go, and the reward. You can do that, okay, because this is what allows you to do with blockchain, and you can link that to data, okay, and data, okay, could be the collateral itself, okay, to the value of the currency, and we can keep talking hours about potentials, okay, of infrastructures, okay.
Okay. Yep, that's all good good things to think about. So we're running out of time, but there are a couple of other questions that I'd like to get through. So Gianni, this one comes up quite a bit with blockchain. So that's about the cost of maintaining a blockchain on the scale needed for IoT, particularly regarding computer processing power and that kind of thing.
Yeah, good question. Okay, there be someone very knowledgeable in technology that said this question, so thank you for it. Of course, okay, what we are promoting now is private blockchain and not public blockchain. And private blockchain built on delegated proof of stake. Okay, so it's not how to say power and computing intensive. Okay, as proof of work blockchain. And on the small scale devices, the nodes, okay, that goes into the waste bin and the parking, rather than having them to consume power, okay, or battery power, okay, by doing complex cryptographic computation, okay, we add an hardware layer with so-called hardware security module, okay, to decongest, okay, and distribute the computational power. So there is no additional burden on that.
Okay. And then finally, you have touched on this, but I think it'd be good to spell it out because it's another thing that people are always going to be concerned about. How does blockchain protect end users from the unauthorized selling of their personal data?
Okay, how blockchain protect end user to sell unauthorized? Okay.
So their data isn't sold in a way, yeah, that they don't want.
Well, first of all, it would be okay to those managing infrastructure to decide what to publish or not, and what is published. Okay, either okay has Bob or Alice. Okay, but if Bob has, because those data were purchased okay from the marketplace, and because of the nature of one copy and only transfer of the ownership, only Bob can have and not Alice. Okay, so double spending. Okay, this is the model of the double spending of the data. Once okay, it has decided which data could be accessed. Okay, is completely addressed by the blockchain technology.
If I may add something, as a utility, we have smart contracts with users in our district in order to ensure that the data flow the data are flowing correctly and according to the willing of the user. I think that this is an added value to have smart contracts on top of that because that is ensuring you, let's say, matching this breach among the old technology and the old culture that we have into the new one.
Great. Okay, well, we're just out of time there, but Paolo, I hope you'll keep us updated as your initiative develops and share more of your findings. Gianni, definitely please keep us up to date as you see more implementations and share back what you see. And
sure.
Thank you both for your presentations. Thanks to the audience for listening in to the webcast. We'll follow up by email with a link to the on-demand webinar, which you can listen to again at your convenience. And if you do have further questions for Gianni and Paolo, please send them in. I'm sure they'd be happy to pick up any further points that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, for the excellent moderation. Okay, and to the next time.
Thank you, Sarah.
Excellent.
To the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.